Hello, early birds. I'm sliding in at the last moment here, but I'm here, and I hope to see a number of you here too. This is our last Q&A of this session, and I'll give it for a few minutes because there's a lag between my talking and your being able to hear it. So when you get on board, just let me know that you're here. Yay! From St. Louis. So that must be Ellen. Yay! And Lena is here. I hope your husband is doing much, much better, Lena, and that you're hanging in there. Yeah, tech guy the pain is not as bad as it was, but he's still basically double vision, blind in one eye. So we're working on that. Louise is here from Denver. Lovely. I thought it was interesting, Louise. I got one of your postings today, and it was said 6 hours ago for my time. So that would have been, if I was working on it at 10 a.m., then you had to be sending it like way early in the morning, your time. So, but I did get it done. So, and Darlene's here, good, because Darlene got last minute, I saw your question, so I brought it along with it so we can talk about it. Yeah, good to hear that, Lena. I'm thinking of you and sending well wishes. Polly's on board. Excellent. Polly, I did get to your recent assignment that you posted. So if you haven't seen it yet, it's there. Now, I believe, except for the question of Darlene, that I've responded to everyone on the Facebook group. If I haven't, just let me know. You can send me a direct message or shortly after this is over, we got some errands to run. It'll take us a couple hours, but I will be back. And then we have Suzanne here. Lovely to see you. You've been so quiet this session. And I say that as a mother who knows that when the kids got quiet, that it meant they were up to something. Robert's here, but I couldn't find the link to StreamYard. Oh, and you're attending from Austria. Well, that's just, there's part of me that's jealous, and there's no part of me that is like, way to go. So I'm glad that you made it. You get extra points for shifting continents and still getting into the classroom. Okay, and Robert, I did respond for the posting that you posted your last assignment last night. So when you find some time in between eating all that luscious food that you can find there and doing everything you're doing, it's sitting there waiting for you. Suzanne says, life has taken over. Sad, this is the last meeting of the last workshop. I feel the same way. I was like, why am I feeling like things are ending? And it's because several of us have been going through multiple workshops, almost back to back, since February. So it will be a disconnect that we don't meet every Saturday like we're supposed to, because but it also has been, as an instructor, it's been wonderful to be able to see the progress people are making and to see how your writing, the craft has grown, because it's just really stands out. Okay, I'm a few minutes after 12, so I want to cover something. This is for Darlene or others who encounter this. Darlene went into week 4 lectures or lecture 4 and could not um, access it. So Tech Guy told me that he went in and checked from this end that it is accessible. But sometimes what happens when you go to, and this is important to know because you have these lectures forever, and so you can go back whenever you need it. And if you click on, let's say, lecture 4, and you click on it, and he says a black screen can come up and there's a little verbiage that says turn on sound or something. If your sound is on, you can click that black screen and then it will bring you to the lecture. So it's a glitch that just periodically happens, but if you ever have it happen that you pull up a lecture and nothing's there, first just hit the screen and you're going to get a black screen, and somewhere on it it's going to say turn on sound. Make sure your sound is turned on, and then click it again and you will get to the actual lecture. So I hope that helps a little bit. Darlene, I have another question that I just found. And if anybody hears that Facebook has blown up, I did not do it, though I was tempted. This is what Darlene had a question about unreliable tells. Just like in normal dialogue, someone can say something and somebody misinterprets it from where they're coming from or where they're feeling, or they might suffer from something that makes it hard for them to translate what the other is saying based on body language, but also based on tone of voice, etc. So this is the question. She says, Mary Buckham, when you say the reader will accept the point of view interpretation, wouldn't it be true that if the character is clearly seen to be unreliable about X or whatever it is, the reader will allow that maybe she or he is interpreting nonverbal communication and even dialogue inaccurately and will double guess what's really going on? Yes, that can happen. If someone has told you so-and-so lies all the time, or so-and-so is off in la la land, or so-and-so, they give an interpretation, but the person, the point of view character who is looking at that character is the one translating. So that's who we're hearing it from. When we get a secondary character indicating that the primary character has truth issues or that type of thing, yes, the reader will begin to wonder, what case is it? Is the point of view character right in their assessment, or is it something else? And what that does is it raises a question for the reader that keeps them turning the pages to find out whose take is accurate and whose take is inaccurate. Darlene goes on, in Pride and Prejudice, the reader has to go to Netherfield to hear from Darcy for the reader to know he likes her. But in Persuasion, we suspect she is interpreting things with Frederick inaccountably because of his use of space with her coming into her zones. Okay, one thing. In Pride and Prejudice, at that time frame, the Regency period in England, people could not speak directly to one another, particularly if they were from the opposite sex. So there was going to be no communicating. But long before Darcy explained that he loved her at Netherfield, the reader got to see the scene where he gets out of the bathtub when he's staying with his friend and goes to the window and watches her play with the dog beneath her. They see him stand up for her when his friend's sister wanted him to laugh at her. He would not do that. He stopped doing that. And in fact, sometimes he pushed back on that. So the reader is seeing these things. And they're getting a sense that something has changed. When he danced with her, we could see that he's upset about, what was his name, Willoughby? No, the guy who ran off with his sister. But there were lots of NVC clues that were not verbal, nor were we hearing it from someone in Darcy's point of view. But it raised questions for the reader that Darcy was no longer seeing her as somebody who was totally unacceptable to him. So you had to take into account, and I bet if you go over it multiple times, that we were starting to get a different view of Darcy before he told her. And even when they were at Netherfield, it was Darcy's friend there who greeted Elizabeth Bennet with, "I've heard the nicest things about you," or something. And he was genuine. You heard it in his tone of voice. You saw it in his presentation with her. So it wasn't like the reader was going to be confused if they were paying attention to the hints along the way. Then you talk about persuasion, that we suspect she, and I didn't know who the she was, interpreting things with Frederick inaccurately because of his use of space with her coming into her zones. So I'm thinking what you meant was John Willoughby, not Frederick, unless there was I looked through the characters that were in Persuasion, and I did not find any Frederick. So I'm assuming John Willoughby. And yes, he did use, it wasn't just proxemics that he used. It was his holding her gaze that he used. It was his tone of voice to her that, remember, she has been shielded. She has been protected. She hasn't had that many okay, I screwed up. Persuasion. Sorry, my bad. Okay, in Persuasion, Frederick is the guy who has returned from overseas, and she's getting inaccurate information from him. And again, that had to do, think of the situation. Anne is basically isolated into a small group of people in her neighborhood, and she has her family, but she's not part of the family. So Anne, when the captain, we'll call him that, comes back, she never stopped loving him, but she can't talk to him. She has nobody to speak on her behalf to him. So she is constantly watching. And when he starts being friendly to the other two sisters and they're giggly, and she's grieving in many ways for what she lost. And there's, again, a lot more body language going on there other than proximity. So it is given that situation that, particularly for the women, they were very, very good at reading the nuances. When somebody, like when he helped her over a log, but he quickly moved his hand, that's telling her she's done. She read it wrong. And she felt that he was justified in many ways. She wasn't happy with the situation. She knows that her father, external dialogue, still indicated that he was a captain and was below their station. But it was intentional there. Then Darling goes on, remember, and while you were sleeping, Lucy asked Jack, whose type am I? And he can't tell her because of respect for the Coma brother. I like that for a minute. I thought, Coma brother, is that kind of, it took me a second for figuring that one. He has just almost kissed her. It's clear to us, the viewer, even without the tell scene, where he confesses his feelings for Lucy to the coma brother Peter. Okay, here's the thing. Definition of what an unreliable narrator is. It can be defined by a narrator who misleads the reader, either deliberately or unwittingly. Many unreliable characters, it's through their circumstances, like you find in the Jane Austen situation, character flaws, or psychological difficulties. You'll find a number of unreliable characters in psychological thrillers. In some cases, a narrator withholds key information from the readers, or they may deliberately lie or misdirect. Now, if you read a lot of Agatha Christie's, oftentimes they will, because those are mysteries, they will step aside and talk to each other, but the reader is not brought into that conversation. So you can do anything you want with this situation. So there could be reasons if someone is suffering from amnesia, but they're trying to hide that fact. If someone is suffering from an accident that included brain damage. In the movie The Sixth Sense, we were in the point of view of the psychiatrist, the adult male, the whole time. So because he believed the little boy saw a ghost, we believed the little boy saw ghosts. But it wasn't until the very end of the movie that we found out that the psychiatrist was a ghost himself. So that was intentional. It was misleading on multiple levels. So you can have a number of different variations of an unreliable character. And that in itself can be a whole other. How do you use that? This class was not about unreliable characters per se, but it's basically oftentimes when one person says something and you see them doing another, that becomes an unreliable character that we're looking at. Because, and this is where you have, let's say, a woman and a man. Got to remember which hand I'm talking about. And remember, women can read body language much better. So this is why a guy is swooning over another woman because of what she says, whereas the woman watching the interaction is going to think, you fool, can't you see? Don't listen to what she's saying. Watch what she's doing because of that misinterpretation. Here we have someone here. Robert says, Harry Potter is an unreliable narrator character, especially when it comes to Snape. His conclusions are almost invariably wrong. Exactly. Ron, on the other hand, has every prediction come true, but he is the Cassandra equivalent, and no one believes him because he's always being the one saying the opposite of what the point of view character is. So you can do it intentionally anytime you want. There's no one response with an unreliable character. So Darlene, does that help a little bit? And again, the examples you gave of in the Jane Austen stories, it's interesting when I see people write new versions of Jane Austen and they're snipping at each other. It's not really conflict. And they're just, well, I'm not going to talk to the other. It is staged and it becomes contrived. Darlene says, so it's like show and mistell. Exactly. So two people can actually be looking at another person's body language. But if one is good at translating and one is not good, or one is used to translating are they a threat or are they not, but they're not paying attention to the neutral, or someone is looking for someone to be lying and they don't see those cues from the character, but they're certain that that person is going to be lying anyway. Darlene says, so the reader can see that maybe the show means some other tell. Yes. If it's something, one of those kind of, and this is, I pointed this out for a number of people, that you can have a tell. All right, I'm going to use Robert. And when Robert gets to it, he'll know what I mean. He has his powerful figure, and then Robert stopped a sentence and then had the character click his pen. Now, given that clicking the pen can mean agitation, which is what Robert wanted it to mean, could mean worry, could be thinking, could be impatience. There's a lot of things that clicking the pen can be. So my recommendation to Robert was to make it clear by just adding that little single, he clicked his pen, instead of a separate sentence, attach it to the previous one so that it was linked, that here's this guy showing this aggressive, determined body language, and the clicking the pen is part of that. So it's not something else. So if you have a tell that is normally just like hands clenching and the knuckles get white. Now, you can do that. A lot of times it's just associated with someone being angry or frustrated or withholding information, but sometimes it can be excitement when something could come true, a dream, the young character who's being asked to the prom by someone else and they just cannot believe it. They're going to get the same tight. So you want to make sure that the body language you're putting with your show is consistent and clear. And then the mistell, you have a justification for. You know, it's like, no, I don't believe him. This is the way this guy acted before, and I fell for it. All right, that explains why there's a mistell. But if you're showing that this person is the opposite of what's being told, with no qualification of why they're feeling that, either their training, their background, their previous experience, you've got to explain that in the tell. Okay, so I hope that helps a little bit. So again, I believe I got to everybody's homework either last night or this morning. And trust me, I am looking for an alternative to Facebook simply because it has been so problematic in this session. And it went that way for those who were part of the challenge. It worked during the challenge. It just, a week later, they changed something and decided it was a good thing to just, if you actually type in #Q, you can get questions from all Facebook groups. Carol says, I was a little confused with the introduction of a new character. Use the same process or different. Carol, I don't know. Are you just talking about what are you? It's not clear to me. The process. Do you mean showing their nonverbal communication, or usually when a character is first introduced, it's the first time the reader has seen that character, That is when the reader allows the author more words to anchor that character into the awareness of the other individuals. Carol's saying yes, and their description. Again, if you're introducing, here comes Bob. Okay, Bob's come into the room. You haven't met him at all. Your first, from the point of view character, is you look at them. But too many times, particularly if you're writing in romance, all you get is something like tall, handsome, and dark. Okay. And that's so generic that you don't see anything because you don't know tall in response to what, tall, etc. So by explaining that he had laugh lines, or he had he ducked his head like not comfortable chatting with strangers or something. So you can combine more than just the physical description, and you usually have more space depending on the word amount that you're dealing with. When you're writing something very short, you've got to make sure that every word works harder. When you're writing 60,000 words or more, you've got more space. So look at the readers that you feel like you see their characters. And pay attention to how they do that. And I will guarantee that they will add a little bit of description, but also some nonverbal communication so that the point of view character can translate that other character. Robert Dugoni, Dugoni, his first book that came out must have been 10, 12 years ago. But it was his debut book, and he did an outstanding job of clarifying his characters when they came on scene with very specific, somebody looked like a stork unfolding as they walked toward him. Well, you're going to remember that character more than that character was tall. And there's a number of authors that can just do a great job. Look at a lot of the ones that in the examples that were given working through the lectures can really pinpoint strong characters and show them so that the reader understands. Nevada Barr does it. She writes a mystery series, and you get a real sense, and you can see, because again, the more we expand on something on the page, the more the reader is paying attention and saying, this matters. So she's not giving a full paragraph to everyone, but she will give a full paragraph to certain characters so that we're attuned to them more because she was attuned to them in the point of view. And if it's somebody in a series and you come back and you revisit, you're not going to give that much page space, but you're going to show a little bit of something different because the character has been impacted from the previous story. So there might be something that they're quieter now, or they're louder now, or they're pushier now. Does that help a little bit, Carol? Okay, good. Thank you. I want you to know that as I was going through people's work, sometimes I could, give you just a high five and a great job. Sometimes, though, even after receiving that, you tried something new, and I found some more opportunities to go deeper and look at it. That's not saying you're not doing good. It means this craft is so underrepresented on the page, and if we're not consciously aware, we might be skipping over it and thinking it's there because we see them in our heads when we're writing. So expect some hiccups as you go along. Okay, I think this is Robert. Yes. When introducing a character's tell or tick, can the explanation wait? Yes. For example, the point of view character sees it but doesn't know its significance until they see it multiple times. Absolutely. Detective Wise cleans his glasses, but it takes Max a couple of times seeing it before he realizes it's Weiss's method of occupying his hands to free his mind to concentrate on his conversation partner. Absolutely. And that is using the glasses, turning away, clicking on a pen. If you see it in conjunction, readers are not dumb. They are looking for you to help them understand. But when that particular thing, when they're taking off and they're cleaning their glasses, when it's done, most people know, even in real life, when there's a conversation going on, that is a kind of like filling a pipe type of situation, or tapping a cigarette before it creates a pause, and the reader understands intrinsically that that pause can be a thinking pause, but it can be explained later on. And Max can, when he does explain it, they'll go back and say, ah, yes, this makes sense. Carol says, this has been great, which I'm glad. And I'm sure that the more you use it in your writing of your first draft will be easier. Absolutely. Just like learning a new way to do whatever you do with a golf club or a baseball or football. First times you got to go real slow because you're conscious about where's your hand, what's it doing. And football, I'm using American football, not British football or European. But then the more you do it, the more it's going to come. If I already had to have a first draft, then use body language and the emotion tension to edit your work. Is there some sort of cheat sheet that can help this process? Carol, it depends on, there's not a cheat sheet because it's not like at this point you have to do this. It all depends on the characters, on the genre, on the subgenre, and all your intention. You are the captain of your story. You get to direct, I think this doesn't have enough emotion in it. And if you give your work to beta readers many times are just readers. They're not writers. So they can be saying, you have to read what they say, which is like, I didn't really feel this here. And that says it's missing the emotion, which is what the body language and the emotional tension can make sure is in there. So in your revision process a few times, you're going to see, and if you have time between when you write it and setting it aside and then coming back and reading it like print it out. So you're reading it in a different way than you are on the screen, and do it in smaller chunks. And you will be able to start seeing where the emotion is kind of flat and you're just moving the characters on the page. You know already that for you personally, that you tend to rush through the emotion stuff. It comes out in the exercises sometimes, and that's not a bad thing. It's just something to be aware of. And if that is your challenge, that makes it easier to pay attention to that in your work and say, okay, I'm hearing Mary's voice in the back of my head here, and she's probably telling me add some more emotion. Because when you would write and say, this is a very emotional scene, and then you went through and the emotion was not showing, this is where you trust an editor to perhaps help you, even a pre-editor. If you're doing indie publishing, you can have an editor who ask them specifically, look at the emotion. Because if you as a writer tend to fixate on get the people where they need to be and the words here and the words there, and you may be missing the emotion on the page. But that's what body language, even the examples of people who posted, here was it originally, and then without even adding that many more words, they did a rewrite. And it was like, whoa, this is a whole different story. And if you can do that in the couple of weeks that we've had together, see that in other people's work, it works. It works on the page. Darlene says, I feel that my writing has changed head and shoulders. Thank you so much for having this live workshop like this. Well, I really appreciate each and every one of you committing to your work, not just wishing you'd be a better writer or wanting to be a better writer, but taking two things, time and the money to commit. And I try to make these kind of workshops so that they are not other places I've seen these at thousands of dollars. And to me, I know, particularly when I was starting, at 5 kids underfoot, and husband worked 2 jobs, I worked a full-time job. That money allocation was something that would not happen. So I try to make it something that is viable. But it is your stepping up to the plate and saying, I'll work with Mary, even if she doesn't always say it's great, even if she can be pointed in her comments or tells me what I don't want to hear. Because that is what can make you grow as a writer. It is not to be mean to you. It is to challenge you to grow bigger, and why there's so many exercises to do, because some worked for some people and others didn't. And that's okay. They're still there, and there are still all of the examples in the Facebook group, if you can find them, because there's some really amazing work that's been done here in this month. I think this is Robert. Yep. Robert says, advice from Neil Gaiman. You always have to remember, when people tell you that something doesn't work for them, that they're right. It doesn't work for them. And that is incredibly important information. You also have to remember that when people tell you what they think is wrong and how you should fix it, that they're almost always wrong. And you can find that particularly with professional editors who have never been a writer or you can get here's your way, here's some other way. That other way might be the way this person would fix it, but it's just telling you, fix it any way you want. If I give a suggestion, it is something like this, and this is why. If you understand the why behind it, then you have the choice and decision to say, Mary, you're full of it, or I never thought of it that way. Let me look and put it into my words. So oftentimes when I used to fly around a lot more and teach live events pre-pandemic, oftentimes they would toss me in with the editors and the agents at a day-long event. And I would sit there, fly on the wall, listening to these editors and agents saying, I feel really bad because I can see something and I know it can be, I don't quite know how to fix it. All they can say is fix it. And as writers, well, that's not fix it how. So it was they don't know necessarily how to write. Some of them are amazing at being able to pull out things or seeing it and helping you bring your work to a higher level. But particularly if you're working with a traditional publisher, and the higher you go on the food chain, meaning uh, those editors and agents don't always have the time to help polish. And you can see it in people's work that I remember there was one writer and she got an amazing debut deal, just powerhouse agent, high in the level editor, and the first ones to put out books in a quick drop, 1, 2, 3 type of thing, instead of waiting for a year process. Now, she always said she never learned to plot because her editor would replot the story. She would fix it for her. Well, that worked until that editor left the publishing house. And then all of a sudden, this writer disappeared because she didn't know how to pull a book together. She got used to kind of like the exclamation points, revealing emotion instead of using something like body language to get it across. So if you find that you're growing in your writing and your writing's getting better, you're going to have more people doing hands off. So be aware of that and build in your own support system where people will give you the honest truth. Robert says, I also have some inexpensive pre-recorded courses that, wait a second, I lost it. That are quite helpful. You should be able to access them through the Teachable. Yes, there are a number of them on Teachable, and they're like $19 at this time. You don't get feedback, you don't get exercises, but you do get as much information as I can pack through into roughly a 90-minute presentation of the topic. So it's topics like pacing, like differences between men and women, that type of thing. Carol says it was bad timing for me with my eye situation. I know I will be reviewing the 2 courses over and over. Yes, and sometimes that just really sucks. But to me, Carol, what happens in this situation is the silver lining is your approach is not, oh my God, I couldn't do it. I failed, Mary failed, everybody failed. No, you're doing exactly what you should be doing, which is saying that you plan to review, you plan to catch up on what you missed because of a physical situation that was out of your control. So I understand that perfectly. That's the kind of attitude that you want to move forward in your career because it's going to make a huge difference. So when you get an editor who just doesn't get your work and they say no, don't let it stop you. Just say, this is not the right editor for me at this time. Robert says, your critique, comments, and suggestions have all been great. I always find it most helpful when someone gives me specifics of what they find jarring, whether they give me ideas for fixing it or not. And that's because as a writer, that's what I needed to see. Don't tell me it was good, because that didn't tell me why or why not, what worked for you. Also be aware, if you have a reader who's reading for you, not normally reading in your genre, their feedback may be biased because they want to make that more like the genre that they normally read and love. Carol says, I will probably be taking more of your workshops. I had the same issue. My editor told me what to fix, but was learning story structure. And that's the best intentions in feedback that can only come from where the person is who's doing the instructing. And if you find someone that works for you, take advantage of it, because it doesn't mean that they're always going to be available. So Carol, was your editor telling you to fix something else and you were, or they didn't know story structure? I'm not sure, but I'm glad you understand that sometimes they mean well, and it just, if you can't get specifics, if you can't make a mistake and learn from that mistake, and to me, that's like giving information and just saying someone to fix it. It's like, well, why am I working with this person if all they can tell me to fix it? I know it needs fixing. I need to know how to fix it. I need to know how to change it, how to even look at it differently. So that is the help that you can find at times. We were talking earlier about the fact that several of us in this have gone through story structure because they were writing a romance or strong romantic elements. Then we did sexual tension and the 12 levels of increasing or decreasing sexual tension, and then this body language. So we have been here since February. And so it's been kind of like we get to see each other in the same way. And that's what I'm trying to create, some of these courses so that they can tag one on another, so that it's not just about taking this subject, it's about growing your writing in general. Because there's no point in taking just plotting and not knowing about sexual tension. But if you took that first, you would think that, oh, that's all I need, and I don't need story structure. So the next one that will be coming up, I hope to make it only a 2-week course, and it's on archetypes and looking at male archetypes, looking at female archetypes, looking at why archetypes are an amazing jumping off place to write a character. And certain archetypes are going to find certain situations more problematic for that. And then we do male archetypes and we do female archetypes, and then how they interact with each other, how the librarian, how are they going to challenge the warrior? How are they going to mesh with the king? That type of thing. So that's going to be about 2 weeks long, and I think it's going to be in August, because the one after that is plotting for all types of stories, not just romances. So that's for, you can go to it for the romance, but it has different templates for it and questions provided. So that's about building story structures, whether you're writing a mystery, a thriller, a sci-fi, young adult, middle grade. They need story structure. And so that's what that is going to be coming, I think, late September, October. So those 2 more will be coming. But eventually, I will be bringing in enough workshops so that you can have this smorgasbord to look at it in a year in advance and saying, this works and this doesn't. Maybe you want to do that. Or if you've done this, then I know that you can that would be a good jump off. So Polly says, I love how well these courses work together. They provide such invaluable learning. Thank you. Appreciate that. Because to me, it's intentional. You need to have the structure and then what matters next. Now, I have a huge, but it's all text. It's not, no, there are lectures with it on hooks but I'm reworking that one. So, and Darlene says, my absolutely favorite where I was introduced to Mary is hooks, because we look at that in a lot of different ways. Carol asked when is the hooks course? At this time, I've been doing a lot of 90-minute hook courses. Seems to be the one that's most requested by writing groups. And those oftentimes are just a little fee to get into. So this group is going to teach in that. I'm being the presenter, and you as an outsider to that group can get them. And I don't know when I'm going to be able to bring the big course. I need to break it down and do more quizzes and all sorts of stuff with that. So it might be next year before I can get to that where it's something that's accessible. Lena says, I took romance structure. Would your generic plotting class be too repetitive to take? In some ways it is, but the templates are different. The questions are different because in the romance, you really want to look at, it's about the relationship. The generic plotting is different. And so I use examples. I think I use Willow as one. So that's a fantasy. I use a mystery. I use examples that are not just romance related. In the romance course, it's much more about this point in your story, the relationship, keeping the focus, because what too many times people, particularly who are starting in romance, are getting into the mystery aspect of the story, which you can have a mystery element, but too many times people like them over here on the mystery and they're forgetting to focus on the romance. So there is a difference. Carol, I think, I'm trying to think. I know I talk about cozy mysteries because within a genre, there's kind of a paradigm, a line, a continuum. And there's cozy mysteries are in the soft end, meaning you don't want them. The structure is the same, but the intensities is different. But if you go to thrillers that are actually going to be filed in the mystery section, it feels like it's a whole different beast, but a lot of that is the structure is still the same. So when you're looking at mysteries, it's all about, okay, where do you put the red herrings in? And how do you use that scenes to make it moving tighter as you're moving towards the first plot point or turning point in the story, usually a quarter of the way. And then what happens at the midpoint of the story, how it changes everything. And then the climax of the story, how you can build to it. So yes, we generally have a lot of mystery writers in that, and some tend to be cozy mysteries, but it's not just cozy, it's for other kind too. So Louise has been in both of those courses. So she knows that there is a difference, and you feel that there's a difference once you've been in one and taken the other. But at one time, I only had based on break into fiction, and romance was included in that. But the more I worked with people, the more it was like, this piece is missing. So that's why they ended up with different templates and examples for them that are specifically romance. or if you're writing something like a cozy mystery with a relationship that is going to be ongoing and growing and causing complications to the story. Okay, any other questions that I might have missed? Again, I tried to catch up last night and then some people this morning. So everything that was posted in the class that I could find. Louise says, when we want to retake a course, how do we sign up for it? Usually I try to give a discount for, okay, Louise, if we're talking specifically about the plotting course, you've taken that already. So you have access to it. So if you want to take it again, just reach out to Tech Guy or myself, and we'll give a, we haven't created it yet, but I'm sure we could create a, been there, done that, want a refresher course. That's not going to cost as much as the original course. So just reach out to us to make sure. Because again, particularly like this year we did where you took this course, then the second one's going to be less, the second one should cost less and the third one should cost less than the second one. So that it's a, you're going down in price. And again, for Louise or anyone who has taken any of these courses, you get to take, you get the material and the whole thing. Louise says, I want to plot another book. And that's one of the things in the 2 story structure courses, the romance and the general. We get an hour one-on-one time to talk about your story specifically. And that is, I can point out things that I'm seeing or hearing, and you can point out. So you come away with a better sense of what can I do with this story and how can it lead in? So Carol says, what are you running next? And by the way, those are the only 2 courses that I do the one-on-ones with. Because usually the cost of a one-on-one with an instructor like myself is usually more than you're paying for the course. But I want you to get that course and you have it and you have all the feedback in it, etc., plus the one-on-one for as long as I can do that. So that makes those 2 plotting courses different than you're normally going to find. Carol says, what are you running next? Next, hopefully in August, will be the archetype course. October. And I hear Tech Guy shouting October for, that's the next plotting course for any commercial fiction story. Wait.
Plotting September, October, followed by archetypes.
So when are archetypes?
Archetypes are in October, after plotting.
Oh,
You're
I thought.
move it up. You're making a split decision here.
Tech Guy tells me, honey, will you check the calendar, please?
Yes, I know I'm right.
Yes, then he knows, he thinks he knows he's right. But he's telling me that the plotting course is going to come first, end of September into October. That's so that you're ready to do NaNoWriMo. But then after that will come the archetypes. I think the archetypes should come first. We just talked about this the other day. So I'm blaming it on his being blind, is he doesn't always hear what I say. So one of those 2 courses are going to be next. And being on the newsletters where you're going to get the information. And as soon as we update the website and put in the last courses and then the next courses coming next year, so you can kind of see what's coming and what's happening next. We just haven't done that yet. I don't know, having half-blind web designer, it can be problematic at times. Carol says, I know that feeling of not hearing because you can't see. Yes, makes perfect sense to someone else who's dealing with eye issues. And Polly said, yay, we get a plot together. That would be wonderful. When someone returns to one of my courses, it's like, oh, that's wonderful because they get my sense of warped humor. Whereas when I have a course and it's a lot of strangers that I don't know, it feels sometimes like, I don't know you. I want to know you. I want to know where you're coming from. I want to know your family. I want to know what's happening in your life. I want to know what's happening in your story. Why are you writing this kind of story, et cetera. And that's why actually the plotting courses are really wonderful, because that one-on-one, you can be amazed what we can accomplish in an hour talking. And for those who are overseas or in different time zones, we do, instead of a phone call, we can do FaceTime, we can do a Zoom meeting. And it literally, at some points, I've helped somebody plot from 5 to 14 books in that time period. Now, it's not every detail, but they understand that they've got enough to run with, that they're done. Lena says, I feel like your family and I'll miss you until next courses. Thank you. And that's the way I feel too. There's such amazing stories that I'm seeing, and the willingness to dig in and challenge yourself is just, I'm in awe. And I hope you're in awe too, seeing other people's work and the differences it's made in their work, from the before example where they, and then the after example where it's like, these are two different writers here. And to me, that's the biggest win. Louise had one of them, the phone call in the plotting course, the romance one. And someone, Corrine, I don't know if you're here listening, I think it was you. It was somebody from, I felt like it was back east. Well, everybody's back east from where I live, but in the middle, I had to be outside in order to get the best phone reception here. And I was sitting there, and all of a sudden, Coyote walked in front of me. And because I have pets, I was honking the horn at the coyote. So I was talking to someone, and she said, what's the matter? She thought I was driving on the road. And it was like, no, I'm just honking at the coyote. I don't want him to eat my pets. And I think she was more surprised at that than at if I'd been talking to her driving. Carol says, it's relationship building. We know and understand each other's pain, frustration, and joys. Absolutely. And we'll go away, and next weekend we'll be going, but don't we have a Q&A now? Don't we have something going on that we get to talk to one another? Ellen says, a friend and I were just talking that the class came at a good time. It took my mind off of dealing with a broken collarbone. Ooh, oh my God, yes. I'm typing one-handed until last week. Collarbones are messy. Oh, I hope you're feeling a lot better. Robert says, I took the master plotting workshop last year, and the one-on-one call was extremely valuable. And I pushed in the romance class to have more people, have more people take advantage of the phone call, because so many people, I give it with all my plotting classes, but it's usually 20% of a group will take advantage of it. So I only do 1 or 2 of those. And it's like, but do you realize how much this can help? And I think as a writer, I know it can be intimidating to talk to someone. And will they tell me my story doesn't work or it isn't any good? And that's not the point in those. And the point is, have you thought about this? Have you considered that? What is it you're trying to achieve in structuring this? And for some people, all it was, hey, that works. The whole thing. You pulled it together. That's all. That's the story structure. And sometimes that's all we need as a writer, is to have somebody say, we're not lost in the woods, and make it track. Robert said, we did some series plotting, not just the current book. Absolutely, because when you're working in like a mystery or some fantasies or urban fantasies, you need to know what's going to happen by the third book or the fifth book, so that you can be writing toward that, instead of you get done with this book and you dive into the next and it's like, crap, I forgot what happened in the last book. So, or I don't know where this is going, or you wish you would have gotten that type of thing. So I'm glad that those who took advantage of it did. And that's why I offer it. And now I'm getting just a little bit more vocal about letting people know that it's there, because that it's something that they don't want to miss. So I know we ran a little bit over in time, but I want to make sure that we had an opportunity to ask and answer any questions. If for some reason, and Darlene, I feel like I kept doing this with some of your work, the 1,000-word project that, Darlene, that you're working on, I answered 2 out of the 4 postings you did on it. But my intention was, I'm not there as an editor, and I wanted you with 2, you can see the kind of issues that I was seeing, but in the time that it would take me to get through those other 2 and had nothing really to do with the class, it was, you were attempting something new, which is gold stars for you. But if you're in a course on motorcycle maintenance and you want to know how to fix your airplane, and it's like, but that's not what we're teaching here or focusing on. So sometimes I will say, this is not the time that I'm spending to do this on your thing that is not part of this course per se. I'm then not getting to somebody else's who is part of this course. So I apologize when I have to say that. Also, sometimes when people send me very long things, when you could have done the thing in this amount. Darlene said, no problem. I got overexcited about this. I pared down the paragraph to the assignment, because you can learn in that paragraph what you need to learn. Some people, and this is not you, Darlene, but there have been some people that all they want is their work edited. And that's not the intention of the course, and not the intention of any of my courses, because that's not, there's a lot of good people out there who can edit. And I look at bigger picture type of things. So any other questions here before we say goodbye? Until we get to play again or plot or do what we get to do. If you have posted again an assignment and I haven't seen it, just post a question. I can usually find the questions easier than anything else. And I'll take a look at it and I will get a response. Carol says, not goodbye. See you next time. Wonderful. Good. I'm glad. Learning can be challenging, but challenging does not mean it needs to be painful all the time. So it lets. Good. Ellen, I look forward to seeing you in a future class, and arrivederci. That's what I was thinking. There, I knew there was a French word there that was appropriate. So till our paths cross again. And as Robert said, there are some, I think, $19 to $39 or something classes are available in Teachable. You can take a look at them there. Or if there's something that you see or you wish that I could have gone into in more detail or something, I might be able to break it down into a smaller increment as soon as I find some time. So thank you. Thank you too for those who reached out directly to thank me for this class, because that was just very, very nice. So I will see you at some point. In the meantime, keep writing, keep challenging yourself as a writer. Look at some of the authors on the lectures that I've given you, regardless of what class, to learn some more. And you'll be amazed. There's amazing books out there. And that's what I want you to be able to write and get out into the hands of the readers. Because the more good books that are out there, the more the readers trust buying books. And thank you, Louise. I hope Tech Guy is going to be better too. If not, I'll slap him around. And we're actually going next week to see if we can get him some kind of prism glasses or something so that he can start seeing better. So it's a slow slog to get better, but he will. I give him no option otherwise. So take care, everyone, and thank you.